All right, we're going to get started here. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on resilience, the truth about change in challenging times. My name is Chris Downey, and on behalf of all of us at Brivia Consulting, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We're very excited that we have people joining us from coast to coast here in Canada and from all over the world. So we're very excited to have you join us, especially those of you that are joining us from challenging time zones right now. It might be quite late at night or very early in the morning. So welcome. We've been offering a series of these webinars in the last few months, and we've noticed an increase in interest as the offerings have been coming out. So hopefully you found value in some of the previous webinars, and that you'll find value in today's webinar as well. As with all of our webinars, we want to make sure this is engaging as possible for you. So we're encouraging you to please use the chat. Let us know your thoughts throughout the session. Steve really enjoys seeing that chat light up. But also take advantage of the Q&A function. I'll be paying attention to that throughout Steve's talk today. And we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible, at the very least thematically. Also know that we're recording this session as we always do, and we'll make this available to all of those that have registered. So if you had perhaps a coworker that might not have been able to make it today, they'll get a chance to hear and see this webinar. And don't rush to write everything down, because you'll have a chance to hear this again as well. I will reconnect with you at the end, just ways to stay in touch with us and let you know what to expect next from us. But for now, let me introduce Steve de Groot, who of course is our speaker today. And Steve is an author, an international speaker, of course, also our president of Brivia Consulting. And Steve has, one of the most unique and uplifting perspectives on human behavior and what really drives us. For those of you that have heard Steve talk before, you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you that perhaps are hearing Steve for the first time, I assure you, you're in for a treat. So with that, let me introduce Steve de Groot. Steve?
All right. Hey, Chris, it's me. Can you see me okay?
We can, Steve. All good to
All right. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see people here from friends and colleagues and from all over the world. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone is keeping as well as possible during this pandemic. Thank you for your commitment and dedication to make your life and the lives of other people better. I'm so excited that you're here to join us for Resilience, the truth about change in challenging times. I know a couple of my colleagues are here that I'm going to shout out to today. And in our time together, we're going to cover a few things like, what is resilience really? Some of the biggest myths around people and change. We're going to talk about, like, what is this connection between resilience and change? And one of my favorite parts is getting to the 4 things that we've learned from our research and working with over 50,000 people that we need during challenging times to be able to not only change well, move through it well, but develop and strengthen our resilience. We're going to offer strategies, very specific ones. And as Chris said, it's going to be recorded, so you can come back and check those out. As Chris mentioned, fill the chat. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat to the extent possible and get some questions in the Q&A so that we can ask questions towards the end. Before I get started today, I'm going to do something very, very different. I'm going to start with a story. I'm going to share a story that is going to really, it's about resilience and change, and it's going to illustrate and underpin a lot of the ideas presented today. I want to tell a story about a boy. His name was Chris. Chris spent most of his life in specialized care in the child welfare system. He was described when I met him as unpredictable, aggressive, controlling, self-centered, and above all, uncooperative and unwilling to change. He had a lot of diagnoses along this journey, 2 of which were oppositional defiant disorder and antisocial personality disorder, right? More than 40 people that were hired to work with him said he was impossible. He spent many of his days with double staff in physical restraints and solitary confinement, right? There's a happy ending, by the way, if you're wondering, just tuning in, right? The prognosis, Chris would likely live in specialized care for his whole life with 24-hour support, never go to school, possibly never hold a job or live independently. Chris was 15 years old. I was fortunate enough to work with Chris, and he, like so many people after him, including kids in care, gang members, many employees, doctors, managers, and even CEOs of publicly traded companies, they've taught and continue to teach us about resilience and the truth, the real truth about change. We're going to get back to Chris's story towards the end of our time together. Most importantly, what happened with Chris, right? Before we get to that good news story, because it is a good news story, because what happened with Chris exceeded any possibility or outcome that we could have even imagined. So let's get to what we're doing here. What is resilience really? I mean, resilience is a topic that was important long before COVID. We're seeing the word show up everywhere. Resilience, resilient team, resilient. It's become more important than ever, right? But often the concept of resilience is misunderstood and misused altogether. And there's some myths that actually complicate things and perpetuate this misunderstanding and some of the confusion around resilience. Two of these myths are, and you've probably heard them, is that resilience, you either have it or you don't have it, right? It's the idea that some people are resilient and others are not, right? She's resilient, he's not. He's resilient, she's not. Oh, he doesn't have resilience, right? That's a big myth. Another myth about resilience is that resilience is a fixed state. It's the idea that your capacity for resilience doesn't change, right? We're going to address these and many of these misconceptions in our time together. And actually, I want to talk about my friend and colleague, Dr. Michael Unger, who I think has showed up today, professor and chair of the Resilience Research Center. He's my go-to guy on the most accurate and helpful understanding of resilience, right? He's also Canadian, everybody. So that's another kudos to us Canadians, right? According to Mike, resilience is that capacity that we all have as individuals and groups to navigate and negotiate meaningful resources to enhance and sustain our overall growth and well-being, right? The key here, I think, is for everyone to understand is that it's meaningful resources. An important point to note as well is we are all resilient, and resilience is not a fixed state at all. So to learn more about Mike, Dr. Unger, right, his work, check out his latest book, Change the World, The Science of Resilience and the True Path to Success. You can find it at michaelunger.com. Okay, here comes some big facts. I got my arms filling here trying to do all this technology stuff, right? Here's some big facts. All humans are resilient by design, period. Resilience is built into our brain architecture. And I'm excited because I get to mention one of my favorite people in the world, right? She does a lot of talking about the brain. The brain is a social organ, and the architecture of our brain is activated and strengthened through two important ingredients: relationships and resources. One of my favorite human beings in the whole world, and she's here today, and some of you know her, Dr. Jean Clinton from McMaster. Her new book, which I highly recommend for people working in the early years, also for parents, anyone working with children. It's called Love Builds Brains, a book and a title that says it all, right? It makes the case for relationship and resilience. You got to check it out. To learn more about Jean and her work, go to I think it's jeanclinton.com or drjeanclinton.com. So what does resilience have to do with change? Pretty much everything, right? One of the things that we've learned from our research is resilience and change are conjoined, right? They're reciprocal and they're mutually reinforcing, right? Those are my fancy academic words, but they're inextricably linked. Our resilience determines our capacity to move through change in the most meaningful and successful ways. So when we change, our ability to move through that change in this way strengthens our resilience, and around we go. So if you think about it, if we want to strengthen someone's resilience, we want to support successful change. We want to successfully endorse and reinforce meaningful change. Now, the webinar title is change. It refers to change in challenging times. Here comes another important fact. What humans need during challenging times are the same ingredients that we need all the time, right? These facts, which we will discuss today, simply shift from being important to being absolutely necessary and non-negotiable. Like right now, more than ever, in this pervasive and prolonged pandemic, right? Before we talk about creating the conditions for supporting preferred change, and I'm going to open it up to questions today, let me ask you this, and I want to see this in the chat. I want to look at the chat about a person or situation you might be struggling with in the context of an important change. Do you really believe that change is possible? Now, don't answer that too quickly. Chris and I have worked with groups and people, we actually ask them that. And some of them say, you know, I really don't believe he can change. And you know what we say? We really ascertain that to be true. We say, well, you better start working towards an end. And they get surprised. They go, well, why don't we keep going? Because this is the thing that is going to drag and be the impediment to this successful change. And it's not dignified, right? You're responsible. See, we're not responsible for the change of the people we're supporting, but we are responsible for creating the conditions and supporting the preferred change that we want, right? And as we stated, this belief or disbelief, right, may be the biggest impediment and therefore cause a lot of unnecessary confusion and conflict. And it will be, and I will be backed on this over and over, the reason why change isn't possible. Let's get to the second one. People do well when change is understood, right? Sometimes, some changes have many parts or they come at us super fast, right? And they can seem overwhelming. What's interesting here comes another fact that almost all change is predictable to some degree, right? Not in life, but in work, in school, right? All leaders have a responsibility to prepare people, helping them understand as much as possible, to the extent possible, about the change and the important changes, right? When people understand the what's changing, why it's changing, when it's changing, how it's changing, and how it might impact them in their role, they can anticipate and adapt accordingly, or at least better, right? Things leaders can consider, right? Do we have the necessary information? Do our people have the information, the what, the why, the where, right? And if it's maybe or no, we got to reconsider. Have we shared this in detail with our teams? Has the communication about change been clear, been consistent across our departments, across all of our teams, right? If the answer is maybe or no, we've got to reconsider, our approach to change. To put it simply as possible, we talk about this in our sessions. Leaders must communicate two things around these changes. Let's make it simple. One, what's the point of this change? And two, why must we change in this way? Saying we don't know is not acceptable. When people ask the question, we must have the answer or the reason, right? So if my team asks me, well, do you know why it's changing or what's changing? And I can't say I don't know. If I don't know, I've got to give them the reason why I don't know and tell them what I'm doing about it as a second best place, right? Because in a pandemic, this is what we talk about often. Uncertainty kills. Uncertainty in an environment where there's already fear and anxiety that's overwhelming, not closing the loop or leaving dots can be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? And we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that during this pandemic. People do well. This is the third key to change. People do well when they are involved, right? Involving people now doesn't mean that we let them make all the changes. Some people go, wait a minute, right? Most people, however, do better when they have a sense of control or ownership or a personal sense of responsibility. Empowering our people is about giving them a voice and a choice, right? About the important change. It's important to involve them to the extent possible where we can. So things for leaders to consider and HR people to consider, right? Well, before that, let's talk about empowerment. This is a word that sometimes, the word, I love it, but what happens to it makes me throw up in my mouth sometimes, right? Because empowerment really is about a voice or a choice or both. Now, we've heard this before. You can take it or leave it, right? We've heard this. Do what we say or there's going to be consequences. That's your choice. Let's be honest, those aren't choices, right? And if at this point, that's what we're saying, there's probably a myriad of problems at play that, right? That this change that we're struggling with is probably the least of our concerns. So what can we do? Have we provided opportunity for people to ask questions? Have we had them talk about what's important to them? Have we given them an opportunity to share their perspective, right, regarding the change? Have we asked for input, feedback? Have we even asked for alternative approaches, right? This is critical, and these are things that we can do. Here's the fourth key for successful people change. People do well when change holds meaning. Now, meaning and motivation are inextricably linked. If you know us, we do a lot of research here. Where there's meaning, there's motivation. Change, no matter how big or how challenging, when it holds meaning, we can get through it. Some of you know about what we talk about, core four, that they're drivers for meaning and motivation and needs, values, goals, and strengths, right? We have learned when change or our perception of change, okay, aligns with or connects with even just a little bit what's important to us, what's meaningful, our needs, our values, our goals, and our strengths, right? It's key to successful change, right? Humans move to meaning, and meaning moves mountains, right? The key here is for leaders and aspiring leaders to tune in to their people, right? To get an accurate understanding to the extent possible. And I'll tell you how you can do that. What's meaningful to our people, right? Do our people understand the change? Have we aligned the change in the context of the vision, mission, or values, right? have we considered how change might align with the needs and the values and the goals of individuals or the whole team? So this is something that we've come to understand, is that when people believe, right, that the others around them that they're responsible for can change, right? When we believe that people are growth oriented, that they're capable, that they desire and they're willing, when they are involved and the people that we're responsible for involved to some extent, right? When the change is understood, right? The what, the why, the how, in what way, and the impact to the extent possible. And here comes a big one. When it holds meaning for the people that are changing or going through the change, they move through it. They move through it in a way that not only is successful, but simultaneously strengthens their resilience. Our experience has been that when people are supported in a manner that supports these four keys to preferred change and some of the details that we talked about, even just a bit, you don't have to cover them all. Every single one of them has a profound impact on individuals' ability to get through change and to strengthen resilience. And then what happens is they often exceed what we thought was possible or what we believed that they were capable of, right? So my favorite part, questions. So Chris is gonna be helping on the question front and throw them my way.
For sure, Steve. Yeah, there's been lots of discussion in the chat, which is great. So thank you, everyone. But a couple of questions did come in through the Q&A, and on the note of obviously change, what do we do if they have if they have no say in the change?
If our people have no say in the change,
I'm assuming that's the intent. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to that comes back to the voice and the choice, right? They might not have a decision in the change, but can we talk to them about their perceptions of the change? What do they understand? How can we give them a voice? To even stating that I don't have the information is an opportunity to speak, right? So I think that's the first part, is we can always give our people a voice, right? Don't give them a false sense that they have a choice. So be very clear. I want to hear this. I'm going to take it forward, because that's the second piece. When I worked in prisons and even in some of the companies that we work with, people are less likely concerned about, am I going to get them what they want, or am I working on their behalf? Is it important enough that I'm supporting to try to find the information and get back to them and closing that loop and giving them that sense of connection, clarity, and control? Thanks, Chris. And are there other questions?
Yeah, there's a couple that speak to this, and in the chat, Sarah Dan shared this with the group. Can you speak to addressing changes such as layoffs in a unionized environment where the change is so unwelcome? And that also lines up with, what if the leader doesn't really know or understand the change? There's kind of a couple that line up here.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yeah, in those situations where there's an acquisition and integration, or there's cutbacks based on seniority or the CBA, it's important to do what we can to align our efforts to the extent possible with what we understand. Now, so a couple of things. First thing is, I talked about, we're not responsible for the change, but we're responsible as leaders and people that support for creating conditions for the change to be successful. In this case, very similar, and thank you for the question, working in a unionized environment where there was actually an acquisition and integration. And people were saying, how can you value trust and people first if you're firing people and doing this in this way? Well, two of the other values on the wall were dignity and respect. And I think that was important, as we were trying to move through this change in a way that honored those four principles. Communicated clearly. Sometimes there's things that we can do and can say, Sarah, like, I want to do this for you. I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm going to keep you posted, right? And again, back to that situation, is creating conditions where we believe in them, we're working on their behalf, and they know that we're trying to get the information that they need. And sometimes that's a great second place or a consolation for what we really need in that moment. Because it's not that we go through change. Remember, everybody, we've been through changes that have been devastating, but we've been supported in a way that made it meaningful or less painful, or at least dignified and respectful.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. A couple more questions. I know we're moving quickly through our time here. One of the questions just came in is, resilience being fluid, what are some personal strategies for building resilience?
Oh my gosh.
Pardon me.
My gosh, start by thanking the relationships in your life, the people that are close to you, right? Our work with the Getting to Better Blueprint, which we're going to release in 2021, Dr. Jean Clinton's work, Dr. Michael Unger's work. Dr. Michael Unger lists key factors called protective factors, right? Who do we identify with? Who are our relationships, right? What parts of our culture and identity do we stick to, right? Jean will tell you very clearly that relationship. So that strengthen the relationships of your coworkers, of the people in your life, right? Do what you can to build trust, what we call safety, value, and be clear on the important relationships in your lives. If you focus on strengthening the relationships in your life and identifying the important resources that help you, that is a first step. And I mean resources like sleep, eating, friends, your network, right? So start there, and that'll give you lots to focus on.
Excellent. Steve, there's a lot of questions here, but there's a couple more I want to make sure we get to. There's quite two ones here. One is how to deal with change fatigue, where people have experienced change. And that lines up with what if you're dealing with resistance, perhaps on an individual level or a team. I got to tell you, the last question that I think we need to get to is people are wanting to know what happened to Chris.
Oh yeah, Chris. I want to talk about Chris. So you're hanging on.
So let's start with the change fatigue and the resistance, then maybe we can move to Chris.
So change fatigue, also you hear it as compassion fatigue, right? Let's not stop changing and not stop caring, because those two things are impossible. So fatigue, the first question we have, it's the $1 billion question, right? What do we know about this, this tiredness from their perspective? What is really impacting? And we have an article on our blog called The $1 Billion Question. So start there. What do we really know about this? Now, if it's us, ask ourselves, what's tiring me out? Getting back to it again, everybody. It's not the change, but the experience of the change that drags us out. I never get tired of caring, but you know what I get tired of? Having a lack of resources, having people that don't support me, having people that don't believe in me, having people that don't give me the information I need. That is exhausting. So getting back to this, right? When people are resisting, reluctance, apprehension, this is where I've done years and years of work. They often have a really good reason for it. And we need to be gentle and kind of approach, what do we know about this? And have conversations, right? And start with strengths as well. When have they gone through changes? When they weren't exhausted, right? And what were the things contributing to that? So I know there might be more questions. We're coming back. Chris will tell you, we're going to get to the questions and come back again. Chris, can I move on to the story of Chris? Thank you for the questions, everybody.
Please do, Steve.
Okay, so let's hear about Chris, okay? And before we go, I want to say at Brivia, we want to help, right? We have tons of things to help with this stuff. So reach out. So in the first 3 months, okay, this boy that was written off by almost everyone, in the first 3 months working together, there was so much improvement. See, how did that happen? We made sure that Chris, to the extent possible, he knew the what, the when, the important aspects of why the changes we were trying to make were so important to him and the people around him. We empowered him with a voice and a choice to speak on his own, sometimes for the first time, to share his experiences, his opportunities. We even gave him the opportunity to disagree and offer alternatives. We spent time learning about Chris's core four, his needs, his values, his goals. And we spent time trying to get a good understanding of that, which made the changes that we were making with him even more meaningful, right? This just started to transform everything. But here comes the important thing. I want everybody to take this thing about belief away. Most important of all the things, we surrounded Chris with the people that truly believed he was capable of growth and preferred change was possible. It was that belief in him was the thing that fueled the greatest success, right? And here it comes. I want you to hear this. After 24 months, and if you need references, I'll give them. Chris was going to mainstream public school. He made the high school football team. He had his first part-time job, and he had his first girlfriend. But that's not even the most impressive part. Here comes the most impressive part that blows my mind. Chris was the first person in the history of the Manitoba child welfare system in level 5 care to convince a judge to move into independent living on his own. Chris was 17 years old. So you see, Chris was resilient, and he was born with the capacity to change. And all he needed, more than anything, all he needed, just like every single person here, every one of us, was the fundamental belief by the people that surrounded him that the potential, his potential, was more than possible. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Downey.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you very much for that. Very, very quick but impactful story for sure. And I know there are some questions that we couldn't get to here for sure. I do see one person asking, what is the billion-dollar question? They missed it. Of course, the billion-dollar question is, what do I know about this from their perspective? And in fact, for any
It's
of
on
you
the
that want
website.
to, it's on the website. I'd go to breviconsulting.com to hear about anything that we have to offer. We're always here to connect with you. As I mentioned, we are recording this webinar. We'll send it out to you. And at which point, I'd love to hear back from you. What are some topics that you would like to hear more about? Because we're happy to connect. We want to make sure we're making this meaningful for you. And as Steve alluded to, the next webinar topic is called the trust paradox. And we'll be coming back to you in about a month's time with that. So stay tuned for some feedback on that. And again, let us know either through our website or from the follow-up email I'll send you. What would you like to hear more about? And we're happy to connect with you to talk about all of our offerings to help make things better.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks for taking your time, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you so much.